All right, bro, as we sit on top of this mountain,
God's creation, brother.
my question for you is, what was the lowest moment in your life?
The lowest point in my life, brother, was when I decided to endeavor into entrepreneurship, and my family kind of rejected it. My parents kind of went away, my family kind of went away, and I was in it for myself. You know, they said, go get a job, do the 9 to 5, do the traditional stuff, and if you don't do that, it felt kind of like they isolated me alone. It was about 1.5 years, but I realized that it was the necessary thing in order to get to the next level. And I know a ton of people go through it, bro, the having your family hold you back. It was a low point, but now they know the truth. They realize that I was right, and we're moving forward.
How did you push past that?
Proving them not with my words, but with my actions. You need to teach people by example.
To somebody at their lowest moment right now watching this video, what do you say to them?
There's only one way, one direction. If you're at the bottom, there's only one way, but you gotta look up. And when you look up, there's somebody there waiting for you. His name is G.O.D. And he's there with a hand, reaching out, waiting for you to take control of your life. Because I learned one very important lesson. Your relationship with God is like that of a captain and a crew member. One rows, the other one steers. But it's very interesting because many times in our life, we want to get confident and cocky and arrogant. And God says, I steer, but I do not row. We need to put in the work, and God will guide. And that's the greatest lesson I've learned.
That's amazing, brother. You know, that piece of wisdom right there might change somebody's life. Somebody at home watching that right now, they might
God's in control, bro. You just got to put in the hours. You just got to clock in. Got to do you.
And he loves all of us.
Absolutely.
No matter what stage you're at. And he will forgive you for the mistakes that you made in your life.
100%, bro. We're all prodigal children. We're all at his mercy, but he gives us this matrix to really level up and get to know him, his beauty. And what else is there, bro? I definitely don't want the Excel spreadsheets and the big bank accounts under fluorescent lights. I want to live a life of freedom, a life of impact, and a life that will leave change. And I know you do too, brother.
That's right. We're on that path together, my boy.
Love you, G.
Love you too, bro.
There's a reason why the poor people worship God more than the rich people. And it doesn't have to do with because the rich people are better or whatever. It has to do with they're checked, right? At all times they're checked by the system, or they're checked by life that, damn, like they're not that great, right? You're not that much. You're worth shit. Because that's the reality. We're all dust. We're not worth anything. We're not that great. And if you can come with humility, right, into this understanding that you're not hot shit, right? Like humble yourself. Then you can have a relationship with God that is based on being teachable. And a lot of people have an interesting relationship with God, and it's a relationship that once again is based off of what they've been told who God is, right? They haven't experienced God. Why? Because they don't care to experience God. If you want to experience God, you have to be intentional. And you can find God in nature, you can find God in books, you can find God in your interactions with other people, but you have to be willing to look for the truth. And in order for you to look for the truth, you have to be humble, because humility is what gives you the teachable attitude and the student's attitude in order to develop a spiritual maturity that is abnormal. The second one is you need consistency. Just like in your physical realm, the spiritual realm requires consistency, right? You have to consistently develop the spiritual side of your life in order for it to become strong. And when people are like, oh, Luke, how can I become like you? All these things are like, well, what do you mean become like you? Oh, well, you know, you talk this way and you believe these things. I'm like, yes, well, you have to instill a life of discipline that you start adapting these habits and this way of life. And then inevitably, it'll just become who you are. So I think people need to focus on being consistent. And I think people need to focus on having a teachable attitude and being humble. And if you don't humble yourself, the world and God will.
So about Christianity, I know you told me you grew up Christian, but were you like me where you kind of just did it because your parents told you to and like that's what you were around? And was there a point in your life where you started becoming a Christian intentionally and seeking God like yourself? And then after that point, was there a point where God spoke to you or you talked to God?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a great couple questions. The first one is, yeah, I come from a background that has kind of like a Judeo-Christian principle kind of philosophy. And yeah, like most kids, you just go through the motions because you're just a kid. But then once again, like I mentioned before, I started looking at the results of the lives of the people that were giving me this information, right? So they were telling me who God was, right? But I was looking at their experiences, their marriages, not just my parents, but in general, right? The people around me, the people in those churches, things of this nature. And I was like, whoa, like this person says that God is love, but they treat me like shit. So I don't want that God, right? And I started questioning everything that I believed, which I believe is extremely healthy and anybody should do, because I was comparing it based off of what people were telling me. And people aren't the right measurement, right? You can't hold the standard of God to people because people are always going to fall short to it. So I realized I need to get to know who God is. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to read the Bible for 5 years. And the reason I did that was like under the premise that I needed to not be biased towards the world, right? I needed to go on a self-exploration journey. So I went through crazy exploration of psychedelics. I went through the crazy exploration of Judaism, which is, it's unbelievable. It's like, there's so much wisdom, so much knowledge there. It's like phenomenal. Went through the Gita, which is the Hindu text. I went through the Quran. I went through a lot of texts. And when it's all said and done, whether I ended up agreeing with a lot of the things that were mentioned or not, I came to realize that there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of truth and a lot of things that are told, and that a lot of these people had relationships with God, relationships with a higher power, without necessarily having texts or books. So I was like, can they actually have a personal relationship with God, that God speaks to them personally because they're aware, right? They're in tune. And I was like, let me test that. Let me test having a relationship with God where he actually speaks to me directly. And most of you guys don't experience God because you're so occupied and busy and there's so much noise, right? Because the brain's like an antenna. There's so much noise. There's
God whispers.
So much fuzziness, right? That when God speaks, you don't listen because you're not aware. So it requires this idea of, once it goes back to what I said in the beginning, you need to have enough to focus on yourself full time. Because part of focusing on yourself full time is being able to spend time exploring truth, studying truth, dissecting these things that you believe in, and coming down to conclusions as to how the world works and who's in charge and what are the governing powers in the world, and is God real? And if he's real, why does he allow bad things to happen, right? Or if he's good, why do kids get bombed in Syria 24/7, right? All these existential questions, they're questions that if you have the ability to spend time focusing on yourself, you're going to be able to get to know God more in the process of learning. And it's a lifelong journey. You know, I think it's like there's a specific book that was written, I forget who the author was, but it's called Pilgrim's Progress. Have you read Pilgrim's Progress? You should read the book Pilgrim's Progress. It's this idea of the Christian's journey, right? He goes through Vanity Fair. He goes through different encounters with different entities. And it's a book that basically takes you through the journey of somebody getting to know God. So I'm in that journey of getting to know God, and it's a lifelong journey. But like I said in the beginning, in the kind of the three tenets, you need to be able to be teachable and humble and consistent. So if you can focus on being teachable, humble, and consistent, and you are in tune of what God wants to teach you, then he will.
Okay, real quick. When was the first time you heard God? What was the story? If you know it off the top of your head. And how
I actually don't remember.
You don't remember?
No, I don't
When was
remember.
the last time?
Okay, the last time, it's a crazy story. So it's a story that I said yesterday. I was in Josh Retreat, and I went on kind of like a fasting journey myself. And I went up to the desert by myself, 5 days on fasting, just water. And I had psychedelics with me. So I had mushrooms and I had DMT. And I had an encounter with God, and I knew it was God because it was the same voice that had been speaking to me before. And we were just having a conversation regarding being ready, right? And he was basically telling me that I wasn't ready to achieve certain things in life. And I asked him why. And he said, that's for you to figure out. And that was kind of like my last encounter. And my conclusion to that was that if God wants to entrust you with a lot of things, you have to be trustworthy. And if he can't trust you with the small things, he's not going to trust you with the big things. And I realized that there was things in my life that he couldn't trust me in because I hadn't surrendered the small shit. Like I hadn't surrendered my habits with eating. I hadn't surrendered my habits with how I perceived money, or I hadn't surrendered my habits with pride, right? All these things that need to be out of the way in order to be used in a higher way. So that was the last time I had a one-on-one conversation with God that was phenomenal to remember.
I want to tell you my story real quick.
Tell me. I want to
So,
hear this.
Yeah, whenever you pray, because no one ever taught me how to pray, I would just listen when I was in the church to how people would do it. And prayer was mostly comprised of asking for God for things like, please protect me here, take care of this, please bless this guy, just request on request on request. And then someone brought it to my attention, a pastor. He was like, when is the last time you prayed and you didn't say anything, and you didn't ask for anything? Like, if God is your father, when's the last time you didn't ask him for something and you just sat there and listened to him speak? If you have the chance and the ability to speak with the God of the entire universe and all you do is ask him for stuff, like, when's the last time you just sat there and listened and you were silent? And I was silent for like 15 minutes. And then something came on my heart to talk about, which was the sin that I committed earlier. And I said, I'm sorry for committing this sin. I apologize. And it was nothing. And I thought about it. And then the pastor, I remember him saying, God hates it when you're dishonest, and he likes honesty and truth. So like, for example, he used this example. If you were with your wife and you did something specific, and then you said, I'm sorry for something broad, that it pertains to it, it doesn't, scratch the itch. Like, she wants you to be specific about what you're sorry for. And so God hates that. And I said, okay, I'm going to try again. I'm sorry for doing this. Nothing. Okay, that's not it. And then I went deeper. And then on the fourth time, I was completely open-hearted and honest. And it was, I'm sorry, God, I'm sorry that I did not take you seriously. That's what it was. That's why I committed the sin, because I knew it was a sin, but I still did it. And I did it because I didn't care and I didn't take him seriously. And in the middle of me saying that, I said, I'm sorry I didn't take you seriously. He said, it's okay. And that was the first time I heard him. And I started like crying. It was insane.
Epic.
Yeah.
Epic. And it's like I said, bro, it's the honesty and the student's mind.
Yeah.
Like the encounter we had yesterday, right? It's this idea, it's the recognition, it's the humility, dude. You need to be humble. And if you're humble, God will talk to you. It is the truth. And people will want to combat me on this. And I'm sorry that people's life journey has put them in a situation where it may be more difficult to perceive certain things. But like you said, sometimes you just have to sit in silence and you have to struggle. This idea that God's just going to talk to you because you asked him to talk to you when you haven't given him attention for your entire life, and he's just observing your actions and you don't really care about him. You don't think about him all day. Your actions don't say that you are who you are. Why would he do anything for you? Oh, well, he loves me. Yeah, but do you love him?
That's a really good point. So how do you know that this is that this Christian God is the true God? Because a lot of Christians would describe it as like faith is like a battle, and you're fighting against the world, and you're having to. It's faith. That's what faith is you're believing in something. God is not here on this earth. We can't physically see him or touch him or talk to him here. How do you know that this is real?
Because you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Not you shall believe it. Not you shall force yourself to adopt it. It's you shall know. And I just know. And I'm not in the quest of defending God. God doesn't need to be defended. I'm just in the quest of making sure that how I live is, and I'm a bad Christian, that's how I label myself. I'm a bad Christian. I'm the guy that goes against the grain. I'm the guy that you're not going to see going to church and singing songs with the rest of the people, but you'll see me in Liberia building water wells. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to do the things that God is calling me to do in the way that he's calling me to do it. I'm not going to be constrained by somebody else's opinions, by orthodoxy, by others' ways of operating. And what I will say is that even the Christianity of the West is very different to the Christianity in other places of the world. If you go to the Middle East, the Christianity in the Middle East is very different. If you go to South Korea, the Christianity of South Korea is very different. If you go to Nigeria, the Christianity in Nigeria is very different. So a lot of people are experiencing God in different ways, but I think that here, especially in the West, there's a lot of distractions. It's very difficult to get to know God, not just in Christianity, but just in general, right? It's very hard to develop a spiritual life because there's so much craziness and noise and internet and social media and bullshit and addictions. And I think the realization that, to me, this God was the real God was not only just knowing, and it's hard to explain, like, you know, there's no justification for it, and to be 100% honest, but I look at the results of my life based off of adopting this worldview, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And that's the thing, is God isn't supposed to be enough for just eternity. He's supposed to be enough for this life as well. So is the life that you have based off of the belief system that you're adopting, like, your fullest potential? Are you reaching your fullest potential? Is God giving you peace and joy and tranquility? Or do you live a miserable life? If you're a Christian and you're living a miserable life, and you've been living a miserable life your entire life, you live in sadness, if you live in fear and anxiety, then maybe you're not a Christian, because those aren't the signs of a Christian, right? And I know it's a hard pill to swallow, and I may be wrong. That's the beauty of it all. I may be wrong about all of this, but yeah, it's a long question, but that's kind of my thought.
Okay, let's take a quick break.
Run a little pee break.
Anything else you wanted to wrap up?
Yeah, so in conclusion, I would probably not label myself a Christian by definition, because Christian has labels attached to it, right? It's how you perceive Christianity versus how another person perceives Christianity. So by label, not a Christian. I would just say I'm a follower of Jesus. I'll give you a story. I was poor, working at a restaurant, and there was a gay guy that was married to another gay guy, and he allowed me to stay in the room in his garage, right? He had it in for like 2 months. So I had a nice house, and he allowed me to stay. It was like the pool area. So I have massive respect for him. And even though I may or may not agree with the lifestyle, I think people are still human. And I think that you can love people for who they are. You can identify them as human beings, and that everybody has struggles and tribulations and trials, and that my job isn't to judge your life. My job is to inspire you with mine and love you for who God made you.
Mm-hmm.
And if God loves you, then who am I not to?
That's true. Yeah, I would just judge people based on their character and their actions. So I would try not to make any preemptive judgments until I see how they are and how they act and behave, and then make a move from there.
I agree.
Because I've
That's a
met
valid
plenty of
train of
very,
thought.
very respectful and disrespectful and annoying gay people. I've met
And
both.
I've met many people that are disgusting, and they claim to love God.
Yeah.
So I'm not, you know what I mean? It's people's condition and people's nature. So I'm just in the side right now, dude, of loving people for who they are. And I know it sounds like a super crazy train of thought as a dude that believes in half of the conspiracies that exist in the world, that understands how the financial system works, that could be so bitter at the world. But you can't be truly red-pilled if you're bitter at the system, because you are the system. You are part of the virus just as much as everybody else. And if you understand that, now you look at everybody with grace and with humility. And that's kind of how I see it.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think people should know, or that you want to share your thoughts on? Anything you're passionate about?
No, I think we're good.
You think you got it all?
I think it's been a great conversation. I think,
Is there anything you want to ask me?
yeah, I want to say something about you.
Okay.
I am highly impressed, and I'm not often impressed. I'm highly impressed by the way that you think. I'm highly impressed by what you've achieved. I'm highly impressed by your goals and your ambition. And I challenge you to put God first, to not forget Him, to understand that what you have has been given to you, and that is merely in your possession for a temporary period of time. that you are merely a steward of what is given to you, and that you will be judged not for having acquired it, but what you did with it. Well, you will be judged by how you acquired it as well, but you will be judged by what you do with it. And to whom much is given, much is required. So you have a big responsibility on your shoulders, but you have an alliance. You have an ally. You have people like me that are in your corner and willing to support you in your endeavors and to check you when you get out of line. And I think that if we can build relationships like this that are based off of helping people achieve their fullest potential, like I want to see you achieve yours, you can build really meaningful things in life. So I encourage you to stay on the narrow path and to question consistently and in perpetuity all the information that you receive, to keep God first, to be humble, and to lead by example. And that when you look at yourself in the mirror, bro, that you know you're legit. Nobody else needs to see that you're legit. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, you're the real deal. And when you get to that point, you will have achieved success.
Well, thank you for that, first of all. And likewise, on the way you think, I'm really impressed too. And I accept your challenge. So I will do that.
Thank you for having me on the podcast, brother.